Vice President Hamilton Mourao, welcome to Conflict Zone. A few months ago, you told journalists everything's under control, we just don't know whose. Just how bad is the chaos in your administration?
Now, everything is okay in our administration. That was a kind of a joke that I used to say, okay? It was not a very straightforward word that I put. It was a joke, only a joke, because here in Brazil, everything is okay.
O presidente Jair Bolsonaro deu esta declaração em julho do ano passado, durante uma conversa com correspondentes estrangeiros.
Falar que se passa fome no Brasil é uma grande mentira. Passa-se mal. Não come bem. Aí eu concordo. Agora, passar fome não. Você não vê gente mesmo pobre pelas ruas com físico esquelético como a gente vê em alguns outros países aí pelo mundo.
Mas no mês passado, o IBGE divulgou os resultados da pesquisa de orçamento familiar feita em 2018 e detectou que 10 milhões e 300 mil brasileiros estavam vivendo em situação de insegurança alimentar grave, quando a pessoa fica ao menos um dia por semana sem comer. São os piores números desde 2004. Estaria o Brasil correndo o risco de voltar ao mapa da fome?
Tudo indica que voltaria sim, porque esse número do IBGE de 2018 já mostra no limiar, né? Perto dos 5% da população. Nós acreditamos que hoje o número é maior.
Were you preparing for the military to intervene?
We are not a military government.
O pessoal até brinca lá, cara. Se quiser fechar o STF, sabe o que você faz? Você não manda nem um jipe, cara. Manda um soldado e um cabo. Não é querer desmerecer o soldado e o cabo, não.
O deputado prosseguiu, desmerecendo o papel do STF.
O que é o STF, cara? Tipo, tira o poder da caneta de um ministro do STF. O que ele é na rua? Você acha que a população... Se você prender um ministro do STF, você acha que vai ter uma manifestação popular a favor dos ministros do STF?
Se você fosse hoje o presidente da República, você fecharia o Congresso Nacional?
Não há a menor dúvida, daria golpe no mesmo dia. No mesmo dia. Não funciona. E tenho certeza que pelo menos 90% da população ia fazer festa e bater palma, que não funciona. O Congresso hoje em dia não serve para nada, xará. Só vota o que o presidente quer. Se ele é a pessoa que decide, que manda, que tripudia em cima do Congresso, deu logo um golpe, pô. Parte logo para a ditadura.
What sort of joke was it? You had two health ministers who were gone in the space of a single month during a health emergency. A justice minister resigned. An education minister hurries off to the US just days after stepping down from the job, saying, I don't want to fight, leave me alone, don't provoke me. Isn't that enough chaos for you?
No, it is not. It is not. It's things that happen in any government. Okay, the way that the education minister went out, well, it was not a big problem for us. Okay, and you know, Brazil is a very different country, and well, some things that happen here doesn't happen in other countries. It's our culture.
Eu, por mim, botava esses vagabundos todos na cadeia, começando no STF.
Paralelamente a isso, tem a OAB da vida, enchendo o saco do Supremo. E eu tenho o poder e vou interferir em todos os ministérios, sem exceção. Putaria, igualzinho a tomar 3 pinos. Tá muito bem agora, lá imprensa enfiou porrada. Ah, botou um coronel. Coronel é formado pelo IME, tem uma formação. Mas por quê? Espera aí.
Então, para isso precisa ter um esforço nosso aqui, enquanto estamos nesse momento de tranquilidade no aspecto de cobertura de imprensa, porque só fala de Covid, e ir passando a boiada, e mudando todo o regramento.
So why did you write an op-ed, May the 14th? You said no country in the world has inflicted more harm on itself than Brazil, and you warned that institutional damage was driving the country into chaos. You were the one who mentioned the chaos and drew attention to it. You said, we become incapable of the essentials in facing any problem, sitting at the table, talking and debating. That was a powerful indictment of your own administration, wasn't it? Because it's leaders like you who are supposed to unify your country.
Well, the country is suffering what happens all around the world. There is an excessive of tribalism, and the political sides are all very, let's say, polarized. There is a lot of polarization in politics. But our administration is running the country well, and so far as today, things are getting better, and the relationship between the different powers are getting each day better and better. So we had some difficult times some months ago, but now everything's okay.
O pensamento politicamente correto, retornando, ele se ideologiza. E quando as questões são ideologizadas, elas perdem a visão de resultado e passam a trabalhar no seu fortalecimento orgânico, vamos dizer assim. Então, e elas começam a produzir mais do mesmo. Então, quando você... Quanto mais temos de ambientalismo, mais ambiental. Quanto mais indigenismo, mais os coitados dos nossos índios estão abandonando. Quanto mais essa preocupação racial, mais preconceito temos.
O ministro do Gabinete de Segurança Institucional condenou um possível pedido de apreensão do celular do presidente da República.
O ministro do Supremo explicou o procedimento de Celso de Mello.
O ministro Celso, como próprio nessas situações mandou ouvir o Procurador-Geral da República, ele não se pronunciou a respeito e, portanto, enquanto não haja uma decisão, uma manifestação, não há um fato relevante a ser comentado. De modo que eu acho que uma reação dessas, no mínimo, errou o timing. Em qualquer democracia, o intérprete final da Constituição é o Supremo Tribunal Federal.
O presidente da Ordem dos Advogados do Brasil, Felipe Santa Cruz, respondeu direto ao general Heleno. Saia de 64 e tente contribuir com 2020 se puder. O vice-líder do PSOL, Marcelo Freixo, também se manifestou.
É fundamental que o Congresso Nacional convoque o general para que ele explique a sua nota, para que ele explique por que de dentro do Gabinete de Segurança Institucional está ameaçando o Poder Judiciário. A democracia exige essa explicação.
Really, and added to that, the president, his family and several associates are knee-deep in criminal and legislative investigations. Is that okay too?
No, this question is still under investigation, and of course it's in the hands of the judiciary system, and we have to wait for this process to get to its end.
By warning about all this chaos, as you did last May, were you preparing for the military to intervene and start dealing with the chaos? In June, the president openly floated the idea of military intervention, saying the armed forces would not accept absurd decisions by the Supreme Court of Congress. Was that a threat?
No, that's not true. First of all, the armed forces are aligned with their constitutional mission, and they are not stepping out of it. Things here in Brazil are going smooth and well, and I got to make it very clear that democracy is a value not only for Mr. Bolsonaro's government, but as to our armed force too. So there is no threat to the Supreme Court or the legislative system here in Brazil.
Se você fosse hoje o presidente da República, você fecharia o Congresso Nacional?
Não há a menor dúvida, daria golpe no mesmo dia. No mesmo dia. Não funciona.
A vergonha, a falta de vergonha na cara está escancarada. Eles não são a favor da lei, e sim a favor dos políticos que nomearam eles. Está muito claro. Mais um general manifestou a sua posição pedindo a prisão dos ministros do STF. É isso que vai ocorrer logo mais. General Eliseu Girão Monteiro, filho, pede o impeachment e a prisão de todos os ministros do STF.
And the fact that he attended rallies outside military bases where his supporters called for an armed intervention to get rid of governors, judges and lawmakers who imposed lockdowns in response to the pandemic. No threat there either, I suppose.
Well, the question of the pandemic, people have to understand that Brazil, it's a very unequal country. We're unequal socially, economic, and of course geographically. So since the beginning of the pandemic, we've been trying to deal with the health curve, with the economic curve, and with the social curve. That's the way that Mr. Bolsonaro government dealt with this pandemic.
Foi um pronunciamento desastroso pela reação que causou em todo o país. Isso não só uma reação popular nos panelaços, mas sobretudo por autoridades, especialistas, estudiosos em pandemias.
O vírus chegou, está sendo enfrentado por nós e brevemente passará. Nossa vida tem que continuar. Os empregos devem ser mantidos. O sustento das famílias deve ser preservado. Devemos, sim, voltar à normalidade. No meu caso particular, pelo meu histórico de atleta, caso fosse contaminado pelo vírus, não precisaria me preocupar. Nada sentiria ou seria, quando muito, acometido de uma gripezinha ou resfriadinho.
O presidente não está preocupado, não. Ele não está preocupado porque ele tem médico bom, ele tem hospital bom, ele tem remédio, tem dinheiro. A única coisa que eu tenho para me consolar agora é Deus. Não tenho mais meu marido, não tenho mais nada comigo. Eu só tenho Deus. Só.
Nós ficamos escandalizados diante do nosso presidente que não tem coração nenhum.
O senhor acha que a presidente Dilma termina o mandato dela em 2018?
Eu espero que acabe hoje, infartada ou com câncer, de qualquer maneira.
Não tem um coração capaz de se compadecer, de chorar com seu povo.
Deixar de existir. A reserva que eu puder diminuir o tamanho dela, eu farei isso daí. É uma briga muito grande por grupos indígenas que são insulfados pelo CIMI. É a parte podre da Igreja Católica, né? Para falar o português claro aqui. A CNBB.
Ignorante, cafajeste, que veio para destruir, não veio para construir nada, como aliás o próprio Jair tinha falado na campanha. Eu não quero construir nada, quero destruir muita coisa.
Nesse dia de glória para o povo brasileiro, tem um nome que entrará para a história nessa data, pela forma como conduziu os trabalhos da casa. Parabéns, presidente Eduardo Cunha, pela memória do coronel Carlos Alberto Brilhante Ustra, o pavor de Dilma Rousseff.
Diante do nosso presidente, um homem bruto. Como pode governar alguém que não tem empatia?
Well, he attended rallies which called for an armed intervention, didn't he, to get rid of governors, judges and lawmakers. What's that if not a threat to democracy? You want to play it all down?
Of course it's not a threat to democracy.
Well, the governor of Sao Paulo thought it was, didn't he? The governor of Sao Paulo said Brazil, he said, wakes up every day afraid of aggression to democracy, to the Constitution, to the Congress, to the Supreme Court. President Bolsonaro, he said, stop this endless aggression.
No, this happens because there is polarization in politics. The governor of São Paulo opposed to Mr. Bolsonaro. This is much more talk than, let's say, action.
Well, it's dangerous talk, isn't it?
It happens.
It's dangerous
the way
talk.
people behave. No, it's not dangerous. It's dangerous if you have power to do what you mean. But nobody has the power to do what they mean with words here in Brazil.
Plenty of people seem to think you're doing politics through fear these days. Eduardo Costa Pinto from the Federal University of Rio. He says this is the problem of having a government filled with military personnel during an institutional crisis. The military will fight tooth and nail to stay in power, and they have guns, which makes political mediation difficult. Why fill the government with all these military personnel if you're not planning on the military taking over power?
First of all, it's got to be very clear that we are not a military government. Mr. Bolsonaro and I were elected by more than 57 million Brazilians, okay? And of course, we have some people in the government that come from the military, but they are here thinking for the good of Brazil and respecting our constitution and our laws.
The Federal Audit Court is now investigating what it calls the excessive presence of the military in civil public service. And it is excessive, isn't it? The court said in June there were as many as 3,000 military personnel in government jobs. What do you need 3,000 of the military in government jobs for?
Well, first of all, it has to be very clear that any government in Brazil has more than 2,000 military in government jobs, because we have a security cabinet that belongs to the president that has more than 1,000 military people, and in this count of military people are those who work at the defense ministry. So we don't have such a huge number of military people occupying the civil jobs in our government. That's some kind of disinformation that came through some different channels.
And are all these military personnel qualified to do the jobs they're doing? I'm thinking of the current health minister, Eduardo Pazuello. He's an active duty general who followed orders from the president. Is that his only qualification? He doesn't know anything about health or drugs, does he?
Well, you don't need to be a doctor to be the health minister. What you need to be, it's a man who understands the public administration and more, that you do not cope with corruption. And of course, Mr. Pazuello knows a lot about logistics. That was the main problem in our health minister.
And he knows how to obey orders more than the other health ministers, does he? He knows to do as he's told. That's his main qualification, is it?
Well, he has the qualifications and he has been doing a very good job, and this has been attested by all the secretaries of the different states here in Brazil. They are all very pleased with the job that Mr. Pazuello has been doing, because all the necessary support to fight and control the pandemic has reached every point in our country.
Entre as medidas está a criação de barreiras sanitárias em aldeias, que somam mais de 12 mil casos e 445 mortes. A decisão atendeu a pedido de partidos políticos. Eles entraram com uma ação no Supremo depois que o presidente Jair Bolsonaro vetou trechos da lei que regulamentava o combate à Covid nessas comunidades, como, por exemplo, o acesso gratuito a materiais de higiene e limpeza, além da garantia de leitos hospitalares e de UTI.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Bolsonaro has never hidden his admiration for Brazil's former military dictatorship. Do you share that admiration?
Well, we had a period of military presidents that lasted about 20 years. They did very good things for Brazil, and other things they didn't go so well. And this is history, and history can only be judged when time passes. We are still some 50 years away from that period. We need some more 50 years so that this period can be judged well.
No dia 10 de novembro de 1972, no Jornal Nacional, o Cid Moreira lê uma nota oficial do Primeiro Exército, dando conta de que foi morta num tiroteio a terrorista Aurora Maria Nascimento Furtado. E de manhã cedo, no dia seguinte, a família me liga e me pede para ver se eu conseguia liberar o corpo. Eu fui ao exército que não era no DOPS, eu fui para o DOPS, disseram que não era lá, e quando eu descia do elevador, um policial que me conhecia das tantas idas me disse, o corpo estava no IML, mas já foi para o cemitério no Caju. E eu fui para lá. Cheguei lá, estava a Dirce Drache. Dirce Drache é uma advogada que trabalhou com Lino Machado. Quando eu cheguei, a Aurora estava já no caixão. Gente, é muito difícil lembrar isso. Ela foi posta um pano branco rasgado na manga e aqui para imitar um vestido. A gente foi cobrindo de flores. Ela tinha um olho saltado, o outro completamente preto, um afundamento. Um afundamento no maxilar, uma fratura exposta no braço, mordidas pelo corpo, não tinha unha nem bico de peito. A gente tratou de botar muita flor nela para ver se os pais não percebiam. Desculpa.
Desculpe terminar assim, mas esse é um pedaço do Brasil que foi ocultado durante muito tempo.
O agente especial da Polícia Federal dos anos de chumbo, que mesmo acusado de cometer atrocidades, tem orgulho do que fez e pela primeira vez aceita contar diante das câmeras o seu lado da história. Localizamos o homem que detém em sua memória alguns dos momentos mais obscuros dos porões da ditadura. O que você vai acompanhar agora é um relato devastador. Lá está ele, em um hotel da cidade, nosso primeiro encontro com o cearense João Lucena Leal. A maior parte contava as informações logo no primeiro momento?
A maior parte contava. Nem todo ser humano resiste pressão psicológica e nem tortura física. Nem todo ser humano.
Qual é o limite do ser humano na resistência à tortura?
Depende da estrutura física dele. Não era colocado em prática. Até hoje você sabe que até hoje a tortura ela é praticada em larga escala dentro das polícias militares e polícia civil do Brasil.
Quais eram os métodos de tortura mais utilizados?
Pau de arara.
O que significa no mundo da tortura e da repressão o termo pau de arara?
É um instrumento cruel, desgastante e muitas das vezes deixa sequelas.
Na capital do Ceará, localizamos os que acusam João Lucena Leal de praticar atos impensáveis de tortura.
A desumanidade.
Locais. Documentos. E depoimentos resgatam dias sombrios.
Porque depois de tanta tortura, a gente perdia a noção do tempo.
Well, during the vote to impeach former President Dilma Rousseff, Mr. Bolsonaro dedicated his ballot to one of the regime's most notorious torturers. This man was convicted of torture during the 21 years of military dictatorship. Last year, your president called him a national hero. 502 cases of torture were identified in the unit he ran. You have nice heroes in your administration these days, don't you?
No, first of all, we don't agree with torture. Torture is not a politics that our country is sympathetic to it. And of course, when there is a lot of people that fought the urban guerrillas during the late 60s and beginning of the 70s of last century, and many of these people have been wrongly accused of being torturers.
So Colonel Carlos Alberto Ustra was wrongly accused, and you also think of him as a hero, do you? Despite the cases, the 500 cases of torture which were attributed to his unit.
What I can tell you about the man Carlos Alberto Brilhante Ustra, he was my commanding officer in the late 70s of the last century. And he was a man of honor and a man who respected the human rights of his subordinates. So many of things that people tell about him, I can tell you because I had a very close friendship with this man. That's not true.
Pela memória do coronel Carlos Alberto Brilhante Ustra.
Mesmo amparado por decisão judicial para não precisar falar, o coronel reformado Carlos Alberto Ustra respondeu a algumas perguntas e atacou a presidente Dilma.
A nossa atual presidente da República, hoje, está lá na presidência da República, ela pertenceu a 4 organizações terroristas que tinham no seu programa isso. Implantar o comunismo no Brasil.
Coronel Ustra é acusado de comandar as torturas enquanto chefiou o DOI-CODE, maior órgão repressor da ditadura entre 1970 e 74. Este documento confidencial apresentado durante o depoimento mostra que 47 pessoas morreram nas dependências do departamento, mas o número pode chegar a 50.
Lá dentro, 50 brasileiras e brasileiros foram mortos por divergir.
Não é verdade. Eles foram mortos pelo DOI, em combate. Fora, na rua, dentro do DOI, nenhum. Terminou? Reputo, o senhor não está certo no que o senhor está dizendo. Está aqui publicado.
O clima ficou ainda mais tenso quando um dos integrantes da comissão propôs uma acariação entre Ustra e o vereador de São Paulo, Gilberto Natalini, que contou momentos antes ter sido torturado pelo coronel.
Não faço acariação com esse terrorista. Não faço!
Eu não sou terrorista, viu, coronel? Terrorista é o senhor, torturador. Terrorista é o senhor.
As acusações contra o coronel também foram reforçadas pelo ex-agente do DOI-CODE, Marival Chagas, que trabalhou com Ustra por 4 meses.
Não só tinha acesso livre, como participava de tortura.
Ele conta que os presos importantes eram expostos aos funcionários do departamento.
Se eu dissesse que a motivação foi exibir esses corpos como troféu de vitória, o que você diria? Bom, isso está resumindo aquilo que é o meu pensamento.
Apesar de não poder sugerir punições, os crimes apurados constarão no relatório que narra todos os crimes cometidos pela ditadura, que será entregue ao governo no ano que vem. Para os integrantes da Comissão da Verdade, não há dúvidas da participação do coronel Ustra nos casos de tortura.
Ele, indiscutivelmente, é um símbolo da tortura no Brasil.
A comissão também acredita que o comando do regime sabia das torturas.
Olha, há uma cadeia de comando eloquente dita pelo próprio coronel Ustra aqui, né? Em que ele diz que a ordem vem da presidência da República.
So he was wrongly convicted then of torture, was he? It was all made up.
Well,
the trial was fixed.
First of all, I'm not aligned with torture, and of course, many people are still alive from that period, and all of them want to put things in the way that they saw. That's why I told you before that we have to wait for all these actors to disappear so that history can make its part, and of course, what really happened during that period come true.
Well, given that you and your president are not prepared to condemn the torturers, only torture, can you not understand why so many people in Brazil and internationally doubt your commitment, your administration's commitment to democracy? Can you understand that?
Well, democracy, it's one of our national permanent objectives. We don't see Brazil out of democracy. Our main objective today is make of Brazil the most brilliant democracy in the Southern Hemisphere.
Até sou favorável que a CPI, no caso de Chico Lopes, tivesse pau de arara lá. Ele merecia isso, pau de arara. Funciona. Eu sou favorável à tortura, tu sabe disso. E o povo é favorável a isso também. Não vai falar em ditadura militar aqui. Só desapareceram 282. A maioria marginais, assaltantes de bancos, sequestradores. Através do voto, você não vai mudar nada nesse país. Tá? Nada, absolutamente nada. Você só vai mudar, infelizmente, quando um dia nós partimos para uma guerra civil aqui dentro. Né? E fazendo um trabalho que o regime militar não fez. Matamos 30 mil. Começando com o FHC. Não deixar para fora, não. Matando. Se vai morrer alguns inocentes, tudo bem.
Really? And with people like Augusto Heleno, Minister of Institutional Security, another retired general, he's on record as saying he believes it's up to the military to put this house in order, this house meaning Brazil. Another threat? You have all these people who are prepared to make threats, but you say there really isn't a threat. I'm confused, Mr. Vice President.
Well, like I've been telling you, makes parts of the discussion that we have, the polarization in politics, okay? It's mostly words than actions, because you won't name one single action from Mr. Bolsonaro government that was a real threat to democracy here in Brazil.
But words matter in politics, don't they? You play it all down, but even the Supreme Court's Chief Justice, Dias Toffoli, warned in June about the president's dubiousness about democracy, he said. Dubiousness. That's not a great characteristic for a democratic leader, is it? If he's dubious about democracy.
Well, I think there is no way to think there is some dubious feelings of Mr. Bolsonaro to democracy, including last Saturday, for instance. Mr. Bolsonaro and Mr. Toffoli were eating together in a dinner, so if Mr. Toffoli had any doubt about the way Mr. Bolsonaro behaved, they would not be together in their house, in his house. Beg your pardon for that.
Your former Justice Minister, Sergio Mourao, accused the president of interfering in an investigation into his family, basically attempting to obstruct justice. This is a highly damaging allegation from a minister who used to be well-liked and respected by Mr. Bolsonaro, wasn't it?
Well, Mr. Mourao made these accusations. These are being investigated through the Supreme Court. We are waiting for this investigation to come through, okay? And of course, we have to wait for this process to end. I myself, I'm side by side with President Bolsonaro during all this time, and I can tell you that he did not interfere in the federal police, in the work in the federal police, so that he could help some of his sons that are being accused of some wrongdoings.
How do you know he didn't? Did he tell you that he didn't
How
interfere?
I know that? Well, I've been with Mr. Bolsonaro since the 2018. We've been working closely together, and I can tell you, he is not interfering in the work of the federal police. The federal police is doing her job. They are investigating all this case, and our judiciary system is investigating the problems that one of his sons has. So I see that this process is going as the way all processes go here in Brazil.
Mr. Vice President, how important is truth in your administration? Let's take the issue of deforestation and the fires this year in the Amazon. August the 10th, you said government agents were executing urgent measures to contain deforestation and fires. A day later, President Bolsonaro said the exact opposite. You won't find any spot of fire, he said, nor a quarter of a hectare deforested. The report that the Amazon is burning is a lie. In fact, it was his statement that was the lie, wasn't it? Because the Amazon was clearly burning at that point.
Well, we don't deny what happens, and we've been working very hard to stop any illegal deforestation and illegal fires that happen in the Amazon. What is clear is deforestation has been increasing since 2012, accelerated last year. Since the second half of this month of June, last June, deforestation has been decreasing, so the work is beginning to pay now. And of course, we still have the problem of the fires. We are in the dry season. The dry season year to year is beginning to be bigger and bigger. And of course, we have to have more resource, we have to put more resource in the fight against the illegalities that happens in the Amazon area.
Yeah, but when Mr. Bolsonaro, August the 11th, said there is no fire, the report that the Amazon is burning is a lie, that itself was a lie. It wasn't true, was it? Simply wasn't true. So why lie about these things?
No, what happened? No. What happens in the Amazon for the question of fires? It's very clear. We have some more than 500,000 farmers in the Amazon area, and some 5% of them, about some 25,000 farmers, they work their fields with fire, and that's a very ancient system to work the field. So we have to make them stop this so that the fires don't grow year to year.
The fact is, these are the worst fires in a decade, aren't they? In September, your satellites recorded more than 32,000 hotspots in the rainforest, 61% rise over the same month last year. And in both September and August, when your president was telling us there were no fires, the blaze matched or surpassed last year's single-month high. So the science director for your Amazon Environmental Research Institute said, we have had 2 months with a lot of fire. It's already worse than last year. The satellites can see it. Why do you deny it's worse than last year?
No, we don't deny. We don't deny anything, okay? September of this year has been worse since September last year. But like I told you before, some 70% of these fires are raging in areas that have been already deforested many years ago, that are occupied by farmers. Only 1/3 of them are happening in areas that they should not happen, and we are fighting them. Since the beginning of the Green Brazil 2 operation that we launched since the month of May, where we stopped some 6,000 points of fire. So we've been doing our jobs.
You've been doing your jobs, but not very effectively, it seems, according to reports on the ground. If the fires are that bad and there are still 32,000 hotspots in the rainforest, the 61% rise over the same month last year, that's not very effective, is it?
Well, like I told you, the season is very dry. So it's a moment that fire happens. And of course, you say 32,000 hotspots. 32,000 hotspots in an area of 5 million square kilometers. I think you can agree with me that's not so huge. Our people are telling around the world, okay? Because the Amazon is very huge. So what's being passing to all around the world, that the whole Amazon is in fire, and that's not happened. The fires happen, like I told you, in areas that have been already deforested since many years ago.
Mr. Vice President, the accusation from human rights groups is that your administration has deliberately undermined efforts by your own federal agents to stop deforestation. Human Rights Watch says that while federal authorities imposed thousands of fines for illegal deforestation, a presidential decree has allowed most of them to go unpaid. What's the point of doing that?
No, we don't comply with illegalities in the Amazon. For instance, our environmental legislation say that any property in the Amazon can explore 20% of its area. The other 80% has to be preserved.
But
so
you let people get away with not paying fines. You let people get away without paying fines. Why? Almost everyone gets away with not paying the fines.
A Amazônia não pode ser esquecida. The Amazon cannot possibly be forgotten or sidelined at all. Temos muitas riquezas. We have a wealth of resources. Gostaria muito de explorá-la junto com os Estados Unidos. We would very much like to tap into these resources together with the United States.
I'm not sure what that means.
Eu gosto muito do povo americano. O Brasil elegeu um presidente que gosta dos Estados Unidos. E a Amazônia pode ser solução para o mundo. Não conheço o senhor, não somos inimigos, precisamos conversar.
I am always eager to talk. Obrigado.
Sim, senhor.
Thank you. So bad.
if people don't pay fines, if they don't pay their fines, the land that they have is going to be arrested. But so far as today, we have a problem of regulation of the land tenure. We need to regulate this. This is a big problem that we still have in Brazil, okay? And we are dealing with this in the National Council, that I'm the head of the council. That's one of my main objectives. I've been working together with our agriculture minister so that we can go ahead with this, because it's very important that we solve this problem, because only repression against people who are making things wrong, it will not end the illegalities. We need to advance with the land tenure regulation.
Well, why should these criminal groups involved in deforestation stop when your penalties are taken away and they're not even obliged to pay fines? Means everyone gets away with it with no penalties, which is exactly what you wanted. And Mr. Bolsonaro made no secret of his intentions. He openly attacked his own environmental agencies, which he called industries of fines, and promised to end their festival of sanctions. So he made it quite clear that he wanted to take away the sanctions, take away the punishment, and let all the illegal logging go ahead. He was quite clear about that.
Mr. Bolsonaro spoke about that when he was a candidate. And a candidate, you know, speaks about a lot of things.
Oh,
but,
so it wasn't true. It wasn't true then. All the reports on the ground say that's exactly what he's done.
We put some $300 million in fines. That's a lot of money. Okay, so our environmental agents, they have the freedom to do their job. They are putting fines on everybody that are doing illegalities.
Well, that's not the reports coming from the ground. Mr. Vice President, final word on the pandemic. When it comes to the coronavirus, you have around 4.7 million confirmed cases, the third highest in the world after the US and India. More cases than all of Europe. Not a great record, is it?
Well, like I told you before, okay, Brazil has a lot of inequalities. Okay, we are not an equal country. We have problems in the social and economic, and in of course we have a huge geography here in Brazil. So we try to fight this the best way possible. We regret almost 150,000 Brazilians that we lost their lives, but we have cured more than 4 million people here in Brazil. So I think that despite this number of cases and number of deaths, we dealt very good with this pandemic crisis.
How much use was it for the president to call it just a measly cold and say to people, I think almost all of you will catch it one day. What are you afraid of? How about being afraid of dying or having long-term health problems or blood clots? Not much. He hasn't got much sympathy for his people, has he?
Of course, the president has been always concerned about the people. The president, since the beginning of the pandemic, said it very clear. We have to take care of the health and we have to take care of the economy, because we know that a lot of people here in Brazil, they have very difficult to earn their money, because we are live in a period of economic crisis, that we don't have jobs for everybody. People live in an informal way, and from night to day, these people lost any chance to have some kind of revenue. So the president, who knows the common people, knew that about.
All right, Vice President Hamilton Mourao, thank you very much for being on Conflict Zone. Thank you.